Welcome, listeners. Such a joy to be here with everyone. Today, we're especially honored to have Lani Medina, a senior associate at Barton LLP, join us. Lani is a seasoned corporate transactional attorney and Air Force veteran. And prior to joining Barton, Lani worked at two other prestigious law firms. Prior to joining Barton as a senior associate, she also worked in-house. At Barton, Lani focuses on mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, and minority investments, providing tailored strategic advice to clients ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. In addition, Lani offers outside general counsel subscription services. She also manages her solo law practice, Lani Law PLLC, representing small businesses and nonprofits in New York and New Jersey. A proud Puerto Rican and Bronx native, Lani's journey from the disciplined environment of the United States Air Force to top-tier law firms is a true testament to her resilience, leadership, and passion for law. Beyond her very impressive legal career, Lani is deeply committed to promoting kindness and excellence within the legal profession and serves as a dedicated board member of Youth Voices Center, Inc. So Lani, it brings me great joy to have you here today. Welcome. What an honor.
Hi, Courtney. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's very much appreciated, and I'm excited to talk about how mindfulness and meditation has played a role in my life. I know there are a lot of things that we're going to get into, but I first just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to have me here. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you so much. I could have gone on and on just with your background alone. It's so very impressive. But yeah, it really is an honor to have you here. So thank you. So I just want to give listeners a brief understanding of your very unique background and your journey into the legal sector. So if you could tell us a bit about your background.
Sure. I just to kind of take a step back, my path towards becoming a lawyer is certainly non-traditional. I am still the first lawyer in my family. I've been practicing since 2010. And the fact of the matter is my journey started with my decision to join the Air Force. I'm Puerto Rican, born and raised out of the Bronx, and I wanted to see what life was like outside New York. And I wound up being stationed in Kansas for 4 years.
That's a little bit different than New York, I would imagine.
Very different, very different. It was a major culture shock to me.
Yeah.
And I would say that, just to kind of fast forward, I started my professional career in the Air Force and I finished my associate's degree in Kansas. I decided to separate and I had the opportunity to get a job at Columbia University. So when I was working at Columbia University, I was doing admin work, working at Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, but I was also a part-time student. So when I was at Columbia, now we're getting to the, why I decided to become a lawyer question, I guess. I took this class called political theory, and it was taught in the Socratic method. And I fell in love with the idea of learning how to think like a lawyer. I didn't really know what lawyers did. I certainly didn't know what transactional attorneys do. But it was this idea of like learning how to be analytical, using my mind that really attracted me to this idea of becoming a lawyer. Um, and so with that in mind, I wound up at Fordham Law School, had a great experience there. Um, and I know we'll probably get to this at some point, but it wasn't a quick decision for me. It was a gradual decision. Like I had to kind of convince myself that I can do this because when I decided to become a lawyer, the response that I got was, "You want to become a lawyer? You're too nice. You're too nice to become a lawyer. Why do you want to do that?"
Yeah.
Or I got a response that was something like, "Okay, you become a lawyer, but you're a do-gooder, so you're going to do public interest work and all this stuff." And I was farther from the truth, but I entered into this profession with this idea that, you know, maybe I didn't have enough, or I didn't have what it takes to cut it out in the quote unquote corporate world.
Right.
I no
I
longer
can,
feel that way, but just to give you some context.
and I appreciate that because that resonates so much with me. So I had taken 3 years off. I graduated from University of Pennsylvania, and I had a lot of creative interests in addition to really having a deep passion for photography. I also enjoyed being in the classroom. I was teaching part-time. I got a certificate to teach. And I was told I was so warm and gentle with the children. And then this passion for art and being in nature. And when people heard I was contemplating going to law school, they said, "Who? You?" Like it didn't align with sort of what one imagines a lawyer to be, or sort of the stereotype. And sort of compounding that I guess confusion amongst people was they'd say I sound too young. Like your voice is too soft. You're not going to be able to convince people where your voice is sounding too gentle, too soft. So there were all these pieces in the back of my head and all these interests that I had where I was pulled. So like you, here was something where I really wanted to challenge myself, the thinking, the challenges of being a law student. It excited me, but then there were these other pieces telling myself, "Oh, I don't know if I'm really this, I don't know if I'm cut out for this or not." So I appreciate you sharing that because it, from a different angle, it resonates with me.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that has experienced this, because I'm sure there are a lot of other lawyers that consider themselves like outliers in a
Yeah.
sense. They
Yeah.
don't fall in the box of what it looks like or what it is to be a lawyer.
Right.
And I think part of my mission, vision, and purpose is to try to show people that authenticity is best skill that you can bring into your legal practice. Like, above all, you have to be you have to learn how to practice law um, with authenticity in accordance with your core principles and values. It
Yeah.
took me a long time to get to understand that. And it's one thing to understand it, and it's another thing to actually take the steps and put in the work um, to try to create the life, the professional life um, that a life that you find filling and
Hmm.
meaning. I believe
And
you could practice law and like it. Who knew?
yeah, and that is, I think, a large part is staying true to who you are and what you want and what your values are. For listeners who are listening, Annie is not here. Annie is an executive life coach. She prides herself. She puts so much emphasis on the importance of authenticity and really being true to ourselves. And when we are true, when we can open up and embrace who and what we are, I think that's the pathway. That's what helps us gain the most fulfillment in our lives, whether it's our professional goals or our personal goals. And I know we're going to get to this, but it sounds like for me and you, a large part of who we are is that kindness piece, that level of compassion, not only towards ourselves, but to others. So, so interesting that, you were able to see at an early point. I don't think that as a young associate, people can connect or feel comfortable with allowing themselves to embrace who and what they are and their background. But it sounds like you really were able to connect with that at an early point, and that in turn helped you to find the path to where you are now.
Thank you. I would make one minor clarification.
Yeah.
I feel like I experience a lot of the I don't even know what I would call it. I still remember what it's like to be a junior associate. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I remember like I was getting stuff done. I was a really hard worker. I was checking off all the boxes. Um, but something was kind of missing. And I don't think I really got the authenticity part until I went in house. Um, and when I was in house, I was running the deals on my own, the M&A deals. And it's weird because like I realized that just me being myself, like little did I know, just to put some context here. In the Air Force, I was an information manager. Little did I know that those skills, managing information, really crosses over into running deals because you have to be super organized. Somebody has to keep on top of it. Somebody has to know where all the pieces are.
Right.
And I started to realize like, oh, I have like kind of a knack for this. And it's because I have practical experience. And so I started to have a little bit of confidence in myself. I started to pay attention to how people were interacting with me. Like they were acting like, they were like, whoa, like she's in charge. So I guess I better act like I'm in charge.
Right, right, right.
You start thinking like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe how I'm looking at myself is I've been looking at myself the wrong way. And now I'm seeing how other people are responding to me. And I realized that the shift was that I was just being myself.
Mm.
Um, and that was the really the real difference. And just being myself, I feel like gave me more confidence, the self-confidence that I have now.
Yeah.
Um, and that is not to say that I don't still struggle, do. Um, but I feel pretty good about where I am mentally, emotionally, and I think for me personally, it's been really important for me to infuse kindness and empathy and compassion in my practice because it's literally who I am. Or I
And
try to be. I should qualify that. I try. That's the intent, and I think the clients get that. They feel that, and I like to be known as someone who is a trustworthy and as someone who has integrity. And I think that goes a long way in any profession, really. But it's helped me a lot in my practice, my legal practice.
yeah, and what I'm picking up on what you're saying is learning to be comfortable. I heard you say like you weren't maybe prior to going in-house comfortable with like people were perceiving you as a leader, but how you were identifying with yourself until you could pick up on that and be like, "Oh, okay, this is a piece of who I am." But then to extend kindness, to be gentle with yourself, to be compassionate, that's what allows us, I think, to open up to our wholeness, to see like how how many beautiful qualities we have that maybe went unnoticed or maybe we weren't comfortable, but when we can open to those qualities, they can actually make us more resilient. And in turn, I do think that the people around us, whether it's the people we care for or the clients that we serve, they can feel into that. And that can help create, I think, even more trust, the trust that our clients have in us, and they can sense our trueness, our authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what probably comes across is the clients realize that you care, like you really care, like
Yeah.
you care about what's going to happen. And I think that going back to the self-compassion point, or the self-kindness, self-compassion, I think that is even harder, like the self-kindness, self-compassion part, because usually we're the hardest on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I am. And that's actually something I'm working on. And you know what this self-kindness looks like. And for me, what it's looking like lately is slowing down. Slowing down so I can be more intentional about the things I want to do, and just more strategic. It allows me to be more productive, actually. The ironic part of slowing down um, is actually making me more productive, I find. But it doesn't come natural to me, right? Especially like when you're type A personality. For me, you know, I have a tendency to get overwhelmed, even if I'm not showing it, right? It's
Yeah.
internal. Yeah. Outside, I'm projecting something else. I know that. But on the inside, you know, I still experience things like imposter syndrome and then question, you know, but I found that for me personally, I built in meditation and mindfulness into my practice, and along with a whole bunch of other tools. And I am starting to it's a process, but even now I'm starting to look at myself differently. Like I'm not just a lawyer. There's so many other things I like to do. I want to teach and I want to be public speaking, and you know, there's so much I want to say to people. And this is the first time in my life where I felt this way. So because for many years the goal was, oh my gosh, like what's it gonna be like when I become a lawyer? And now I'm a lawyer, and I still feel funny sometimes telling people that. Um, but I'm realizing what, you know, to your point about resiliency and growth, it really goes back to how you feel about health and how you're taking care of yourself. Because like I made a decision to show up to work or try to show up as the best version of myself. That's a decision. People
Yeah.
don't know that, but they don't know that there's work that goes into how you choose to show up. And
I I totally get, I love a lot of things that you're sharing, but a couple that I just want to touch upon. First of all, like you, and I think many attorneys, we tend to fall into the type A category, and we are extremely hard on ourselves. Even though we're kind people and many other attorneys are kind, we will be so kind to everybody else. But at the end of the day, despite all those kind gestures we made or kind things we said or did, whether it's the pro bono or the volunteer services, at the end of the day, I think, at least I know from my personal experience, we can go through all the things we feel like we didn't do good enough, or we failed to do, or we should have done, and that can take a toll on us. But just to get back to your point, that slowing down that you're describing, that goes against everything, especially being a lawyer. I think it goes against everything we're conditioned to do. Like the pace of life, even if you extrapolate the demands of working in a legal sector, if you look at the pace of life these days and how distracted we are between our devices, and we're being pumped with news and we're pulled in this direction and that direction, the pace, it's like warp speed. And then you pile on that we're almost encouraged to just keep going, to grind out, to get more and more done. So, talking about resilience, like your ability that you described to notice all this, to notice how internally, like maybe not externally, people see Lani as cool, calm, collect, but like internally, these wheels are grinding and things are moving and there's agitation, anxiety, and stress. The power that you're explaining in being able to slow down, like maybe everything around you is not slowing down, but that internal slowing down through mindfulness practice, through meditation, through other practices that can incline you to relax, that's what, getting back to what you said, that's what gives you the space to choose how to be the best you. When we don't give ourselves that permission to slow down internally, then we fall into autopilot. We're constantly doing. But I admire in all that you juggle, I admire that you're able to notice sort of your like hardwiring, we kind of say, like where what's our default mode. And again, we might judge that, we may be hard on ourselves, but how beautiful that you're choosing to slow down so that in turn you can be the best you, and the best you is going to do the best job for all those that you're serving.
Thank you. I Slowing down is so counterintuitive.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, after I still consider myself a newbie. I've been practicing mindfulness and meditation, kind of self-taught about a year and a half. Did a lot of like guided meditations and um I like doing mindful walks. But I would say like one of the most important things, or the first step really, is that self-awareness,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm able to identify situations much quicker than I did before, or how I'm gonna react, or recognize really quickly, you know, when I'm being triggered, or maybe it used to be the case where I was noticing it afterwards, and now you start noticing it while it's happening. Then you start noticing
Yeah.
when it's gonna happen, and you're just, it's you really start seeing like that your mind plays tricks on you. And if you don't take time to just slow down and actually get in tune with your body,
Yeah.
body's your body's speaking to you all the time. Um, and people don't pay attention to that. We're always on go, 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 and then you wonder why you're miserable, and you're so unhappy because you haven't slowed down to think about what do you want to do? Are you happy with what you're doing? Is this it? You know?
I'm pulling out my binder as you shared what you just shared. It brought to mind a poem that I often share in the mindfulness
Yes.
classes that I teach, because it's true. Mindfulness, one of the strongest, well, mindfulness in a nutshell is awareness. And when we can be more aware of some of our habits, some of our patterns, that's the gateway to change how maybe we're relating to ourselves, how we're relating to the stressors, which there are many in working in the legal sector. But I loved how you said, like, sometimes you may notice it afterwards, but the more and more our practice deepens, the more our mindfulness practice deepens, the more we can avoid reactivity, then we can create that space. So before we fall down the same rabbit hole, we can make a more conscious decision in how to respond, or what kind of way to speak to a client, or maybe another attorney we're dealing with. I just want to share, it's very short, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's pretty spot on to what you were sharing. It's, some of our listeners may have heard this, you may have heard this before. It's called Autobiography in 5 chapters, and it's by Portia Nelson. And she says, I walk down the street, there is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. So I think that that really is the beauty in being aware and to make conscious decisions that support us, and then in turn, by supporting ourselves, by taking the best care of ourselves and being aware of maybe some of our past patterns or habits, we can unlearn them and then make more skillful choices for how to proceed next. So rather than doing something and then giving ourselves a hard time, like looking back of how we should have, more and more we're going to be able to kind of see the big picture and make more conscious, skillful choices.
Oh my gosh, what you said resonated with me so much. There are a couple of points, I guess, I wanted to kind of piggyback on. One is the reactivity part, right? Like I'm a corporate M&A attorney, so I do a lot of negotiation. Um, and it's an art. The actual verbal negotiation or contract drafting negotiation, I consider it an art. I actually like doing it. Um, but I really truly believe that for me personally, practicing mindfulness and meditations made me a much better lawyer because a lot of times I like negotiating. So I I have feelings. Sometimes I get annoyed. Maybe I get a heavy markup. The other
Mm-hmm.
like annoying or the clients, whatever. But the reactivity part, like to be able to sort of recognize that you're annoyed or you're dysregulated, if you will, and
Yeah.
then to just consciously bring it back and make a decision like, no, this feeling does not serve me. Like it does not serve me to be negotiating from a place of high reactivity. I need to be calm so I could keep my client calm, so I can think straight, and so I can come up with solutions. Because that's what we do. We come up with solutions for our clients. They don't want to hear no.
Yeah.
Do that. They want you to help them. And so that slowing down, the sort of recognizing when you want to react some sort of way, but then being able to quickly you know reach a decision and say, no, slow down, this is what I want to do instead, is such an invaluable skill in negotiations, because I feel like a lot of people don't. hmm, I don't want to say they don't know how to negotiate, but that they take things too personally is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And when your feelings get involved in negotiation, and it's possible then you're making irrational decisions, right?
Right.
um so anyway, so there was that point about the reactivity that I wanted to bring up, and I suppose there was another point I wanted to make, but I feel like I kind of covered it a little bit in what I just said there about the
Uh,
reactivity part. Yeah.
and I agree. Like, and for listeners who are listening to this, like, if we just sort of call to mind a situation in our life where we notice some agitation, we're dealing with a difficult adversary, or we have a really challenging client, or maybe we're just having an off day and internally we're noticing agitation, impatience. When we're trying to resolve difficult issues, when we're negotiating a contract or trying to make a decision about what to eat for dinner, we when we're in a state of reactivity, we can't think as clearly, and we can't get out of our own way. When we're able to slow down, when we're able to use mindfulness tools and resources to be more relaxed, like if you call to mind when you were in a more relaxed state, how much more possibility, like how many more options, how much more creativity is there just by us noticing that in that moment we're really reactive, like we probably shouldn't hit send on that email. We should just give ourselves some time to slow down, to process what's here, notice how we're feeling, and then in giving ourselves that space, I really do think it makes us a better negotiator rather than just kind of going at it with the other person or pounding out those, firing off those emails that later you're going to realize it really wasn't the most skillful way to approach the situation. So really how wonderful, just hearing what you're saying, it shows me how powerful your practice is and how much more resilient it has made you in the work that you do and ultimately the outcomes that you're able to achieve for your clients. It's pretty remarkable.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I'm still new at this, so I'm still kind of amazed that so much change can happen in such a short period of time. And I think I remembered my second point. They're related. So the
Yeah,
reactivity point, practicing mindfulness so you can become less reactive and be more patient. And it goes hand in hand with the ability to make sound decisions. Like
yeah.
the decision making ability is so important. And I feel like I have a clearer head and I'm able to kind of step back and make decisions that better serve my clients.
Yeah.
And what's weird is like sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? Because sometimes the decisions make drawing a boundary.
Yeah.
um, and that could get a little tricky. That could be, boundaries are important, and there's also an art to drawing those boundaries as well.
We could
Um,
have a whole episode. We could have a whole other episode on the importance of boundaries and what that means to us, both in our personal and professional lives. That'll be part two, maybe.
mhm.
Yeah, I do really value everything that you're saying. And on top of what you're sharing, you mentioned you're still new to this. And that's actually a wonderful place to be because in mindfulness, we talk about what are known as these attitudinal foundations, one being a beginner's mind. And there is a meditation. I always botch this quote, but one of the meditation teachers says that, in the beginner's mind, there are, I should have this in front of me. I don't want to, it's such a beautiful, simple quote, but the gist of it is in the beginner's mind, there are endless possibilities, but in the expert, there can be few because we think we know it all. So, and this comes up a lot for us as attorneys, especially more seasoned attorneys. We've been down the road before, even if it's a negotiation or a transaction that we think we're familiar with. When we fall down that road, like I know it all, as opposed to really practicing deep listening, hearing what our clients want, and bringing a fresh perspective, like having, as you're saying, you're new to this. We want to approach things with this fresh set of eyes as if we've never seen it before, because again, that's going to help us to really connect with what it is our clients want, instead of us going back to like, oh, our last client and our client before that and the one before that, this is how I did it in that situation. But I hear you saying, I'm just new to this, but being new and being a beginner is actually a great quality. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And I also wanted to acknowledge that your sense of compassion, that you not only practice your slowing down, like in that in and of itself, to step out of what many of us are so conditioned to just keep going, that slowing down is what in large part I think helps you to open to more options, more possibilities for how you can serve your clients and in really creative ways. But that compassion piece, which I know earlier you mentioned, it's not always easy to practice self-kindness, but if you can maybe talk a bit about what compassion and kindness mean to you, not only in your own self-care, but what it is you bring to the work that you do day to day.
So in terms of, I guess, the self-compassion, one, I made it a point to get myself out there, meaning get out the office, experience nature, walk around a little bit, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. Like that time is for me time to kind of reset, clear my mind,
Mhm.
and give myself the break. Give myself a break. So I know, like, early in my career, I had the tendency to like skip lunch and not eat good. Do you understand what I mean? And you
Completely.
realizing that when you get into mindfulness, there are all these other things, habits that then you want to work on. It has like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So, now I'm back to trying to eat better, and now I'm back to trying to be more physical. Um, I would say that the 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 self-compassion part for me comes into play end of the day. Because I there's at the end of the day, I'm trying to get into the habit of writing down what went well. It's so easy to focus on the one thing that you feel like you could have done better, or the
Yeah.
thing that you didn't get to, or the multiple things that you didn't get to. But you forget all the really good things because literally your mind will go to the negative, right? Like, it's if people could really understand that you could rewire your brain, like it takes time, but it's so doable, and there isn't really any magic to it. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot of time. Rick Hansen, he speaks a lot about this, how we can actually reshape our brains by the way we use our minds. We can take in the good. So at the end of the day, even if we had, I'm sure we can all pick up something. I mean, it could be something like, oh my gosh, what was that outfit I chose to wear today? Or, that was such a thing. Why did I say that to that person? But rather than link up with that, at the end of the day, if we can sit and have a sense of gratitude for even just feeling the body breathing, if we can take that in, it does build up over time. And there's this term neuroplasticity. The more and more we can take in the good, the more and more we're able to see and feel the goodness in our lives that otherwise just sort of passes us by when we're not there for them. But we can create more and more neural pathways for goodness to tap into that, to feel that, to notice that. And that is really helpful in a career where there's so much negativity. We're dealing with challenging issues that there can be negativity just in the cases themselves or the people that we're dealing with, or some of the things, like you said, we're kind of hardwired from an evolutionary standpoint. We don't always look at the situation or the future as being rosy. But at the end of the day, how incredible that you're able to slow down and to really take in the goodness. It makes a difference.
It really does. I made a decision. For me, I really value being at peace, or trying to maintain my peace and my self-composure. And imagine other people's energies can affect you. And when you get into mindfulness, you at least it's, I think, easier for me to stay in the zone, so to speak, and not let other people's energy throw me off, because that doesn't
That's
serve me.
right. And that's important. And it's easy when you're not practicing your own self-care to get pushed over in this field. So I can relate to that. I know we're coming close to the time when we plan to end, and I want to be respectful of your time. But I did just want to see if you can give some advice to other women who, like the two of us, were female attorneys who I think just working in the legal sector in and of itself, despite whether you're a male or female, can be really challenging. But as a woman working in an industry that is largely a male dominated field, and being that you are a Latina woman from the Bronx, can you leave us with some tips that have helped you and that can help others to be more resilient and to go after those challenging roles, not to get pushed to the side, not to let your thoughts or the stories that we tell ourselves to prevent us from going after our dreams.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I could think of a lot of tips, but if I had to kind of settle on a few, I would say definitely have some mentors, right? Doesn't matter how junior you are, how experienced you are, you need mentors to guide you, and you need people that you can just be yourself around, and not necessarily other lawyers. Because there could have, other lawyers, and not necessarily another female lawyer. You could be a male, but just having someone to guide you, a mentor, multiple mentors, is really important. And I think as a woman, like, for me personally, I've gotten past the point where I can honestly say, like, I'm a lawyer with a heart. Like, that's my superpower. I own it. Like, I know what I who I am and what I stand for. And I hope you like it, but maybe you don't. And that's okay, right? Like, you got to kind of understand that you're, as nice as you may want to, try to be, you might not be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. And I say, like, the third thing is try, really try not to compare yourself to other people. Meaning, I think it's okay to compare someone that you're looking to model, and they're doing something that you like. That's one thing. But to be comparing yourself in the sense of you feel like somebody is more advanced in their career and you should be at that same place. That's not good. You're
Right.
only competing against yourself. That it's your own standards. You know what I mean? You have to get out of the mindset of comparing yourself to other people, or try hard, resist the urge, it's always there, I think.
Judgmental. I mean, I'm guilty of it. The judgmental piece, comparing yourself to others and thinking you're not good enough or you should be better or more like this one. Whereas it can be skillful to look up to people, to aspire to strengthen certain qualities, but sometimes we often spin it in the light of we're not good enough.
Right.
Whereas I like what you're sharing, where, you know, this is who I am. This is enough. And we can't control if other people are going to like it or how we are. But what we can control is how we choose to be, how we choose to carry ourselves. And as you shared with the practice of mindfulness, we really can slow down, like that internal slowing down, and in turn really choose how to best care for ourselves, not only in this challenging field of law, but in the challenging world that we live in. So I think you have, again, I know you say you're new to this, but you have a really beautiful practice, not only one that is formal, like the formal practice of mindfulness, but one that you're clearly weaving into your daily life as an attorney and as a human being. So thank you so much for sharing all of these really important pieces of wisdom that can benefit so many other practicing lawyers and individuals.
Thank you, Courtney. And I think it's really important that we're having this conversation, because I think talking about mindfulness and meditation as an illegal practice is still a little bit of a I wouldn't say stigma, but it's not something everyone is talking about. Like
I
it
think
takes
they
a
will.
little bit of bravery
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah,
come on, a podcast or create a podcast in your case and be so vulnerable. Um, and I want to thank you for what you're doing because we linked up on LinkedIn, right? And
yeah,
and like is I'm looking for a community of lawyers. I'm sure there must be other lawyers and professionals that feel this way, and
yeah.
there might be stuck right now. And I'm telling you, get into mindfulness meditation. It'll help. I
Well,
promise.
it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for you to come on this episode to share. And yeah, I do think that it's changing. It's definitely changing. The legal community is opening up a bit more. I think post-pandemic, we've moved at an even we're expected to move at an even faster pace, and it can be really overwhelming. So I think practices like mindfulness and other contemplative practices help support us as professionals, as individuals. And the more and more people share, as you so graciously did today, when people can see that this isn't some woo-woo practice, it isn't some hippy-dippy stuff, but that these are simple practices, innate, and mindfulness is an innate part of us that can make all the difference in how we experience the work that we do in the legal sector. So I appreciate you thanking me for creating the space, but really it takes the courage of those guests who are willing to share the ways in which their personal practice of mindfulness, of meditation really does better them and in turn the work that they do. So
Thank you
thank
so
you
much,
so.
Courtney. I'm a big fan of yours. I'll keep listening to the podcast and um, I wish you the best. I know that we're probably, stay in touch. At least I hope
Oh,
that's the
for
case. So,
sure. That's not even a question in my mind.
okay,
My
great.
I'm excited to see. I know that you have so much momentum going. Barton is so fortunate to have you. We didn't get a
Okay,
chance to talk about some of the other work that you're doing with Youth Voices Center Inc., but you're really doing amazing work around, outside of what you do for the firm. But it's admirable, and I'm really excited to see what's next for you. So I will be sure to stay in touch. It's wonderful to have like-minded attorneys who really do value the benefits of mindfulness. And I just want to share as we close this episode, if listeners want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about your mindfulness practice or the work that you're doing at Barton or any of the areas that you touched upon during this episode, how's best for someone to reach you?
great. The best way, I'm really involved on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. But you can also feel free to email me at Barton. And my email is lmedina, lmedina at Barton ESQ. That's BARTON ESQ. So Lani Medina at Barton ESQ. And
Thank
also LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, that's how we met. So I'm grateful for LinkedIn and our connection there. So thank you so much, Lani.
Thank
Thank you for your continued support. I'm in your corner all the way. I know there's big things in store for you. And it really was an honor and privilege to have you here on Conscious Corner. So thank you so much.
you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And I just want to encourage your listeners to take the time to invest in themselves.
Mm,
Mhm.
I second that.
Yep. Thank you so much, Courtney. I had a great time.
I did as well. Hope to do it again, and I will for sure be in touch. So take the best of care, and everyone else listening, may you be well.